The expression, everyone's a critic, recognizes those who express opinions on a particular subject, regardless of their actual qualifications. Meet Mike and Julie. They are makers of art, appreciators of artistry, and possessors of more college degrees than is truly necessary in life. These two overly educated friends are uniquely qualified to explore the deep, dark corners of the art world and push the boundaries of that all-important question, but is it art?
Hey, what are we talking about today?
Well, I thought that in the interest of the title of our podcast, But Is It Art, we should tackle the artists known as Bob Ross and Charles Kinkade. Is that his first name?
Thomas Kinkade.
Thomas Kinkade. Excuse me. Thomas Kinkade. And But Is It Art?
No.
World's shortest podcast. Thank you very much.
Well, I think that's a great idea. I sent you a meme, and I'm sure it will end up, being used as our profile thumbnail for this.
More than likely, yeah.
Yes. Of Bob Ross and Thomas Kinkade fighting it out. And I think that sort of inspired me to consider, which one was actually making art, if either of them were, and why or why not.
Why or why not their art?
What is it? Why are they making art? And if they are, can we start over?
Absolutely not. We're halfway into it now. No, I think...
is it art? And why or why not?
Is it art? Right. Because, I will give you a little background on Thomas Kinkade, at least my background with Thomas Kinkade. And that is, I never really paid attention to him until I worked at the local big box bookstore where we sold things like puzzles and, small knickknacks with a lot of his artwork on it. Mm-hmm. And I recognize his artwork now that I know who it is, and it's Thomas Kinkade, the painter of light. But I had never paid attention to it until then. And I remember distinctly looking at it and thinking, it's kind of like everything I've seen in every hotel room I've ever been in.
It is, isn't it? Well, it is. Well, and tell me why you didn't notice it. Is that why you didn't notice it until it was pointed out to you that this is a Thomas Kinkade? Because it just blurred into the background of everything else?
Quite possibly. I mean, I'm not a landscape kind. I don't like land. I'm a portrait. I like portraits. I like faces. I like anything that gives me a good story in one quick image. But these soft, lovely, overly romanticized landscapes that he does, they just don't hit. They just don't hit for me. It's just not my cup of tea when it all boils down to.
Well, Bob Ross also makes idyllic, pastoral landscapes.
Yes.
But they are also, stuff you'd see in a hotel room. Yes.
And probably stuff I have.
Mike spends a lot of his free time in hotel rooms.
Hey, it was a tumultuous past. Don't judge me.
No judgment. No judgment. But I think that you hit on something when you said that, let's see, you had said something about this idyllic pastoral landscape and that it was on all these kitschy trinkets and puzzles and whatnot. And it's funny because when I was doing research for this, as I always do, they call him a chocolate box artist. Like the art you'd see on a chocolate box.
Oh, okay. It's like what?
Yeah, like a Whitman sampler or something.
Yes, okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
This sort of nostalgia for a time that never was.
Yes.
Yeah, and this all like this cozy little cottage and this this, the
It's-
light radiating out of it,
Yeah,
and
the dark, slightly rainy atmosphere and the path that leads into the woods by the lake. Yeah.
yeah. And I was like, that is so accurate, a chocolate box artist. And I found out that 1 in every 20 American homes has a copy of a Thomas Kinkade. 1 in 20.
That's a lot. Well, I've read too that he made millions.
I know, it's disgusting.
He made millions with these paintings.
And I'm not really, I say it's disgusting, but I'm like, I don't want to criticize people who like them necessarily, because we all like what we like, and we're allowed to like I listen to Taylor Swift. Okay. So how can I complain? I mean, I listen to, I can do the high end art stuff, Brian Eno and Philip Glass, but I also listen to Taylor Swift in the car. So if, you know what I mean? Like I work at a museum and I see the best art in the world every day. And then I guess if I wanted to come home, and I guess I could, I wouldn't live with a Thomas Kinkade, but maybe there's something else that I would live with. I don't know.
So would you consider you use the term high art?
Yeah.
Would Thomas Kinkade not fall into high art?
No.
Why not?
Oh, geez.
Ha ha.
See, and here's the trap.
I think we do this every episode so far.
We do. I think I always say that Monet, and I love Monet, let's not get anything twisted here, and I think that for his time, he certainly was a huge innovator, and he still is. He's not alive anymore, but he still is in the way that he makes you think about the way you see things.
Mm-hmm.
But I always say that Monet is like the Hallmark card of the art world, because everybody loves it. Ain't nobody going to walk up to Monet and go, what the hell is that? Or why is this valuable? It's pretty. It's very accessible. But at the same time, I feel like it elevates the form to a different place because of what he's doing with his brushstrokes. And he's the true painter of light, really. And I think actually Thomas Kinkade stole the painter of light from, what was it?
Monet?
Not Monet. Turner, the artist Turner, J.W. Turner.
Okay.
Who is a post-realist that was a step on the way to abstraction. Monet is also a step on the way to abstraction. It's like you have this era of art in the Renaissance, the high Renaissance, where you're painting things exactly how they look. And then you're doing that for several centuries. And then you end up in the 20th century where we invent the camera, and you sort of don't need to paint things
right
exactly the way they look.
Yep.
And so you don't need that realism. And so art becomes about other things. Now, prior to that point, there were plenty of artistic disputes to be had, but I'm simplifying this greatly. But what Monet was doing was really capturing the light as it hit certain colors at the moment, and making dabs of paint represent those pieces of light. And so by doing so, the painting then sort of goes into abstraction. It sort of breaks away from full representation, and it becomes impressionism, the impression of what you're seeing versus the absolute perfect record of it.
Right. So
he does elevate, these water lilies, this bridge over the stream in his little Giverny home. And that, to me, even though it's a Hallmark card sort of situation where everyone loves it and it's beautiful, it still has an elevated sense about it, Whereas Thomas Kinkade, I don't know, the word I would use is it's kitschy. It's not
Okay.
it's not taking it anywhere else. And there's nothing wrong with representation in the age of even the digital world, which is now supplanting the real and becoming, the hyper real, which is a crazy topic for another time.
Yes, I was thinking the same thing.
But
so, okay, to
yeah,
boil this
it's
down.
kitschy. Yeah, go ahead.
No,
Sum
to
it
boil
up
this down,
for us.
in terms of like Monet, though it's still,
Accessible.
simple and everybody loves it.
Mm-hmm.
It's high art because he was doing something different with the paint. He's playing with techniques.
He was playing with techniques, and he was playing with our perception of things.
And you don't think...
I would say, and he would paint the same things over and over again at different times during the day, just to capture that moment,
right?
In a different way. So
right, but Thomas Kinkade doesn't do that.
No, he just paints the same crap over and over for the sake of making everybody feel good. And I had a friend who had a Thomas Kinkade print in her house, and I used to pick on her for it. And she's like, I like it. It makes me feel cozy. And, it reminds me of England. And she had some relationship with the British Isles, so it reminded her of that.
But lots of people liking it, is that a criteria for high or low art?
No.
I'm going to play devil's advocate.
I know you are, and that's a good thing. I'm trying to think, though. I'm trying to think, like, what?
And I'll give you this, too.
Okay.
I cannot paint.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly not in the way that Monet or Kinkade or Bob Ross, not even Bob Ross. I cannot paint the way Bob Ross does. I've never tried it. Not saying I couldn't eventually do it, but as of right now, I can't do what those gentlemen do or did. Okay. So in terms of technique, in terms of being an artist, being able to depict something on the canvas, I have to say I appreciate their artwork, all of them. I appreciate Kinkade's work because it does capture an atmosphere, an emotional atmosphere that people enjoy.
It also demonstrates a certain level of skill.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think that's what you're referring to. You can't paint like that. I can't paint like that.
Right. There is a certain skill to it, but for some reason it doesn't appeal to me either.
So what makes that skill set different from a craft? And this is a very common debate in the art world, by the way, is what makes it arts and not crafts?
Well, would you consider what Bob Ross does as art or craft?
It's craft. I mean, and so is Thomas Kinkade. I don't like his content, but his craft is, superlative.
So what's the difference between art and craft in your mind?
Again, I think that you need to be elevating the form, not just the technique. It needs to be elevating painting all together. What painting can do and express. And
that's a big order.
It is a big order.
After how many thousands of years of painting, to elevate the form.
Yeah.
Is a big order.
Yeah, but lots of people have done it in different ways. I mean, you have abstraction, which a lot of people are like, I don't like abstraction. There's nothing in it. And I'm like, abstraction is just form. It is just form and rhythm and shape. It is painting stripped down to the bones.
Okay.
So that is elevating the form of painting.
So would you consider Mark Rothko?
Oh, I love Rothko.
Oh, God.
Okay.
This is this is a fight my wife and I have over Rothko.
Rothko. Okay, go ahead.
She loves it.
And
Absolutely.
Why doesn't it work for you?
Because it's just square colors, you know? For me, I would rather have a Kinkade on my wall than a Rothko.
Get out of here. We are no longer friends.
This
podcast is over.
But I know why. Because I can look at a Kinkade and at least get the hint of humanity.
Well,
there's a dwelling.
What if I suggested to you that the whole idea behind Rothko's strategy was to just have the colors wash over you? And doesn't color in and of itself convey a feeling?
It does, but just a big blob of color doesn't convey enough information for me.
Oh, I see.
I can't see a Rothko with his ombre of 2 or 3 different colors and say, "Oh my God, that looks just like how I felt on my wedding night." I can't do that.
So you can't translate from literal to abstraction?
Sure I can. But just looking at a blob of color on the wall is not abstraction to me. It's just...
What if you heard a song without words and it said, "That just feels like how I felt on my wedding night"?
That's different because...
How is it different?
How is it different? Because number one, it's a different medium. It's coming through my ears, not my eyes.
Oh, I
number
see.
So... two, music has...
I gotta play devil's advocate here, Mike.
I know, and I'm just thinking.
Okay. So
as you should, but you're right. It's the same thing that you just said, only in reverse, or from my end.
Mm-hmm.
Music can touch me, and I appreciate a piece of music that can touch me more than like a big blob of color. Because I don't respond.
You keep saying it's a big blob of color.
Well, tell me what it is then. It's an abstraction. I get it.
No, it's a sea of color. It's a wash of color. And I always say with abstraction, you take away one part of it and the whole painting doesn't work anymore.
Or is it just a different painting?
It doesn't work anymore.
Does it work in a different way?
Because we have standards in which we hold these art pieces up to. I mean, they're the basics of any design, which is rhythm, motion, form, color, space, dimension.
Mm-hmm. But why only focus on one of those?
He's not.
He's not?
No, he's doing it all with the blob of color. Actually, several blobs of color on one painting. I don't think I've ever seen him do just one.
Right. Then it comes down to the fact that I just don't get it.
Okay. It's okay. There are painters that I don't like at all. So,
I think it's because, again, this is me. You come at this argument, this discussion, as a fine artist. I come at this as a performance artist.
Yeah, but when I was in art school, all I did was performance art.
I know, but you also have a much, much stronger background in fine art and museum work than I do.
But what if I said they were all the same banana? Pause. Anyway, moving on. We don't have to answer these questions. We don't always.
I don't think it's the same banana, though.
I do. I think they're all the same banana.
They can't be.
No, they are all the same banana. Okay, how about this? They're all different bananas in the same boat.
There's no oranges?
No, sorry. Yes.
If there's just bananas. If there's just bananas, no oranges, no apples, no anvils, no rubber tires.
What if I see it as all the same. I see it as all the same. They're all expressive arts.
They are all expressive art, but you're asking me what why is Kinkade an art or not art versus Rothko art or not art?
I
So they're
am,
not
but
all
then I was asking you, like, what if I was comparing Rothko to music? I was comparing Rothko to
right,
performance. What if they
but
were
you're
all the same
but they're not all the
motion?
same.
Yeah,
Rothko
well,
painting is not a Mozart symphony.
hmm,
A Rothko painting is not a Mozart symphony. You do not
they're
experience
not.
the same way. You do not
Yeah.
respond to it. You do not respond to it the same way, nor will they ever come close to expressing the same thing.
Have you ever? This is sort of an off track question, but it relates to
Oh,
what
we
I'm
are so
saying.
far off track.
I
This is
know we
great.
are,
Keep going.
but um, have you ever experienced synesthesia? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I do know what you're talking about. Have I ever experienced it? I don't think so.
So
I think
when
the
you
close.
listen to music, you don't necessarily see colors in your head or like.
No, I do see. I don't see colors. I don't feel things. If I'm listening to music, just solely listen to music, I can see performances. I can see dance. I can see bodies in motion.
Hmm.
I can see. I can see plays being performed to this
So
music.
okay, that's fair.
So is that synesthesia? I don't know, or just my overactive imagination?
It's more like, yes, you have an imagination, but I wouldn't say it's synesthesia. Synesthesia is more like you cross the boundaries and limits of the sense being activated by what you're dealing with. So you're seeing colors when you see music. Certain music is orange, certain music is yellow. When you see a painting, you maybe are like, "Oh, I can make up a dance in relationship to this painting or how it makes me feel."
Yeah, my senses don't crisscross like that.
Okay.
I know exactly what you're talking about because I think one of my kids is slightly synesthetic.
Yeah, I am.
Uh, yeah, so you're talking about things I have no experience with.
Okay, so this is one of the reasons why it's not all the same banana in the same boat. So that's an interesting perspective. I would be curious to pursue this further, but we should probably move on to Mr. Bob Ross here. So, I mean, we're still talking about everything all at once.
It'll come back.
It'll come
I'm
back around.
almost certain it will.
So I was looking up some stuff about Bob Ross, and apparently someone called his work not fine art, but entertainment memorabilia. And I thought, well, that's sort of true.
Okay. Yeah, entertainment memorabilia for the modern age. Yes, it is that. I will agree with that.
Okay.
I don't think it excludes it being fine art.
Really?
Tell me more, Mr. Bond.
Tell me more, Mr. Bond.
No, ultimately, now Bob Ross was a teacher primarily. I don't think he was an artist.
He did paint, like he did over 30,000 paintings in his lifetime.
Right, and he did 3 per episode of
The Joy of Painting.
His PBS show, right? So, and there was over 400 episodes of that.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, so 3 times 400, it's what, 1,200?
You're asking me to do math. I don't do that. This is a math-free zone.
Yeah, so half of those paintings, or a third of those paintings that you just said he did over his lifetime, he did for that show.
Mm-hmm.
But he also, most of his paintings were done in front of either an audience or a classroom.
Mm-hmm.
He was a teacher ultimately.
He was also, in some ways, a performer.
Sure.
Teachers are performers in some way or
Yes.
another. But he was sort of like, I was thinking about this aspect of performance art that we call detritus. Are you familiar with this?
No, this is a new term.
Okay, so when people do performance on the art side of things and not the theater side of things, where, it does get blurry. I mean, you can't really define.
Right.
So this is like, it's not a formal play. You're not like memorizing lines. You're not getting up there and saying the same thing every night. And so on and so forth. Sometimes it's to play with the nature of time. Sometimes it's to play with the nature of experience. You're giving the audience an experience in a different way than they would experience as just being a passive audience. And so sometimes in these performances, because so much happens that isn't it's not quantifiable in any sort of way other than to say that it happened, we call the leftovers from it, the detritus. It's like, so when I did performance art, I would call like the dress I wore or the stuff I threw around or even the words I said, on a piece of paper would be called detritus.
Okay.
So in some ways it's like, in theater, it would be like your leftover props and your leftover, So in some ways, I think of Bob Ross's painting as being detritus. It's this evidence that an act took place.
Okay.
So in that perspective, I mean, you could say it's evidence of his teaching or evidence of his artistic act. I'm really stretching it though.
but again, it comes down to, would you consider it art? Is it high art? Is it low art?
It's low art. I mean, it's both of these guys to me are like the stuff you see in a hotel room again, or a doctor's waiting room, or, I don't know, bus stop. And, when I talk to people about art and its value, I always say like, you have to imagine a world without art. You have to imagine, a doctor's waiting room without paintings, without, anything to look at, or even a hotel room without paintings, or a street without a billboard. Right. So the line between low and high art for me tends to blur a great deal. However, I don't know if these two artists have value inherently because they are putting something out to the world that makes it more beautiful, I guess. At the same time, it doesn't elevate the form in any way. It doesn't necessarily elevate my experience of the world to look at them.
Okay.
And I want that from my art. I want to be challenged. Now you don't. You want to have something cozy to look at when you're at home.
Not necessarily.
Just not a Mark Rothko. Not a Mark Rothko.
Well, it's nothing cozy, and I don't like looking at it. So
okay.
Ultimately, it comes down to personal preference and what gives you the warm fuzzies when you view your art.
But our warm fuzzies are the only thing that we're supposed to get out of art. Is it only supposed to be pleasing? That's not expecting very much.
Well, it depends on the artist then. Is the artist expecting to give more through this piece of work than just
come on, Mike,
a nice, comfortable time?
Where's your Brechtian sentimentality here, or lack of sentimentality? Lack of sentimentality.
Listen,
where's your Brechtian sense of purpose?
I like a good absurdist Ionesco play just as much as the next guy. But I think in terms of these two artists, of Kinkade and Ross, their purpose was not to, like you said, elevate the form. I think they were there just to elevate an individual human being?
Yeah, their wallet.
Cynical. Oh my God.
Well, come
Okay.
on. I mean, Bob Ross he did start like a what was it, like a mail order thing where you could buy the paint and the
Let me give you what I read. Yes, he had this massive.
yeah.
That's how he made his money. He didn't make any money through
I
PBS.
I only remember very little about the joy of painting. But
Yeah, he made no money through PBS, but he
yeah.
made his $5 million bankroll through personal classes and kits and endorsed painting kits and stuff like that.
Right. Okay.
But he was always about teaching painting technique to somebody who wanted to try it. So Bob Ross's purpose for not only mastering his technique, but it was there to show others that they shouldn't be afraid of it, because he worked in oils.
Yeah, he did.
He worked exclusively in oils, which, as an artist myself, I have tried oils. I hate them, but I've never tried the Bob Ross way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I think Bob Ross was there to be a teacher, because again, he was not his soft, happy little trees personality on television was pretty genuine from what I've read about him. Okay, he did not want to cause strife in the world. But he loved to paint and he loved to teach, and he did not want people to try this hobby just to become frustrated and angry with it. So he approached it the way he did, with these landscapes that could be done and still look pretty amazing for
The
somebody
amateur.
with not very much skill.
Mm-hmm.
Thomas Kinkade, his purpose, this is I'm going to ask a question at the end of this.
Okay.
See what you think. Thomas Kinkade painted his to sell. His works were meant to evoke, like you said before, these happy, idyllic times that never existed. You know, he was an evangelical Christian
Mm-hmm.
with a very troubled past.
He also used that Christianity to really rope people into buying his stuff.
Right. But again, I think, and I had also read that a lot, one opinion from an evangelical Christian is that most Christians don't want the dark side of life. They don't want the Brecks and the Ionescos hanging on their wall. They want the gentle. They want to mask or keep out the dark thoughts, the bad thoughts. And I think that's where Thomas Kinkade came from. That's what he painted. He painted these places where you could go and live this life that was simple and lovely and precious. His purpose was different. Now, the question I was thinking about earlier today was, can you separate these artists from their work? Now, as you look at their works standalone, not knowing anything about these two gentlemen, can you call it art? But if you put its purpose and its artist behind it, does it change the work?
Well, insofar as what I said before about Bob Ross's work being being a detritus of an act, if it were the detritus of teaching, this act that, in my opinion, elevates the world to a better place, especially if you're teaching the arts,
Have I upset you?
No, I'm just pondering this very seriously. Why do I sound upset?
No,
I'm really tired today.
I can't tell right now. That's all.
I'm really tired today. It does change in that Bob Ross sense. It does change how I view his work. And no, I still think it's a stretch to call it fine art. I think it's an example, an execution of technique, an excellent technique.
Right. So is that craft then and not art?
It's a craft. He's learned how to make this particular technique of this alla pasta wet on wet oil, wet oil into wet oil technique work for him in a way that that he can make these landscapes, these bucolic landscapes, and very quickly, and that's fine. I mean, no harm done. I don't think the world is worse for them being out in the world, but no, it's not. Though, here's the thing about both of them. Here's why this podcast is fun, everybody, because this is what happens every time. It's because we always end up going, you know what, though?
We always try to trip each other up. And
I was thinking before we started this, and it just came back to me that one of the things I was thinking about is there used to be this tradition for painters in like I want to say like the early 19th century to travel through Italy or other sort of quote unquote exotic places and paint small watercolor landscapes and sort of keep them as a travel record. And then they were easy to travel with because they were these small, like, I don't know, maybe the biggest one would be like an 8x10, okay. And they were often much smaller. And they would, you could pack them up easily and take them on the road and be like, okay, I'm going to the next place. I'm going to paint this other pastoral scene of, rocks and leaves and trees and crap. So there is a long tradition of that and of the landscape. And, Bob Ross, the only difference really is that he was kind of like making them up, and so is Thomas Kinkade. So, I mean, there's a long history of landscape painting. It ain't my favorite, but I very rarely get anything out of landscape paintings. I don't know. That's a bias I have. So
that's a bias I share.
Okay.
Because there's,
there it is.
There it is. Hey, lovely. Got it.
Got it. Thanks. Moving on. Anyway, so, I mean, yeah. If I were to separate them from their intention, it still doesn't work for me.
Okay.
Yeah, that's my perspective. And I really shouldn't judge, except I do. I really shouldn't judge.
Well, you're a human being. We can't help it.
That people like what they like. And yeah.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of what else I had to say. Oh, I noticed that when I was doing research that 91% of Bob Ross's paintings have happy little trees in them. 91% have at least one tree, and 44% have clouds.
Only 44.
Only 44. Out of 30,000 paintings, roughly 30,000 paintings.
30,000.
That's a lot.
That is a lot.
It's prolific, if nothing else. And a lot of people give someone like Thomas Kinkade crap because, and he did say, and I thought this was like an incredibly egotistical thing to say. Not that artists are ever egotistical. He said in 2001, "I really am the most controversial artist alive."
Right.
And I was like, for the wrong reasons.
When did he say that?
2001.
I'm going to bet he said that to spin the argument that the art world considers him a hack.
It was in response to that.
So if you're gonna, what I read about old Mr. Kinkade was that he has been compared to Andy Warhol in the sense that he is capable of marketing his stuff to a point where it kind of separates itself from the artwork. And because when Kinkade was alive, he actually in the late 90s to early 2000s he had stores, Thomas Kinkade stores all over California.
I remember those stores like in the mall.
Yeah, and he sold these experiences. He even went so far as to have a deal with Lazy Boy, the Thomas Kinkade line of furniture.
What?
For your cozy little cottage that
Get
you have
out
a painting
of town.
of. I'm not kidding you. He also got into real estate in the sense that outside of Vallejo, California, he partnered with a contractor to build this Thomas Kinkade gated community.
And see, here's where I have a problem with that. You had said something earlier about how he was Christian and evangelical Christians appreciated his art because they wanted to keep the dark thoughts away. They wanted to sort of,
right.
They were perhaps associating those darker thoughts or those sort of problematic thoughts or experiences with, struggling with values, morals, sin, whatever.
Right.
And I get that. I understand, not everybody wants to stare down the face of their existential experience every day of their life.
Some of us just want a little escapism once in a while.
And that's fine. But here's where I have a problem with that and the whole suburban project there really bugs me. And here's why. It's not fucking real. And I'm not saying that you can't have little houses, white picket fence, your TV sitcom fantasy. You can have it. I take it. But it's not indicative of a true human experience, nor is it indicative or inclusive for everybody who might not fit into that, whether they're different because they have blue hair or they're gay or they want to marry their bartender who happens to be the same gender as them, or they don't identify as the gender they were born as. I mean, there's a lot of things that sort of bucolic picture keeps out.
Agreed. But I think he knew that. I think he knew
that's a problem.
That is a problem, but I think he's selling a lifestyle. He's selling
and I don't
a fantasy like
because it's not real and it's exclusive. It's exclusionary. Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah.
In those terms, it sounds like Disney.
Well, yeah, exactly. It sounds like Disney should have put their little stamp on Thomas Kinkade and made it part of their theme park. Maybe they were gonna.
They may have. Anyway.
Vallejo, California isn't very far from Anaheim, so.
Right. But there was right before the 2008 housing bust, they had put together this little community of 100 or so houses, all one of 4 designs based on Thomas Kinkade paintings. And this contractor threw them up, and they sold.
And then what happened?
They had plans for 4 more of these communities around the same area.
Uh-huh.
But the housing bust hit, and it just didn't happen. However, the first 100 so houses still remain. I'm not sure it's still billed as a Thomas Kinkade kind of enterprise, but they still exist.
Yeah, until the lesbian couple moves in next door.
Well, it's California. I don't,
I don't know. maybe I'm being
Maybe not. I don't
maybe
know.
I'm making assumptions that aren't fair. I don't know. I don't know. So yeah, for me, I have a problem with stuff that isn't
Pushing the envelope. Is that
no
a good word?
the stuff that's exclusionary like that.
Oh, right.
Oh, you're going back to what I said earlier about elevating the form.
Yeah.
No, I there's something to be said for an excellent execution of realism.
Right. I don't think Thomas Kinkade is realism.
It's realism because it depicts something as it would be if it existed in the real world.
Yeah.
That's realism.
Okay. Yeah,
it's not.
It's still very idealized and.
Sure, it's idealized, but that house has a roof and it doesn't. It's not like it's not Picasso's house. You know what I mean?
Right. Okay. Yeah. It's not Monet's bridge. I get it.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Yeah. Exactly. So.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So it's there's something to be said for realism, and you know.
Yeah, I agree.
We're not being fair to these poor people. Although I don't really like Thomas Kinkade as a person. And like you were saying earlier, does that change it? It does. It shouldn't, but I think it does a little.
Sometimes knowing a little bit about where it came from, it doesn't make sense to me now. Yeah. Like I can see it as just this romantic ideal and like, oh, that's lovely. And I can see how many people will fall for that and do fall for that. But whether he intentionally did not confront his demons in his work, or whether he just painted that because that's what was, or he was escaping in his own work.
It's possible.
It's quite possible. But knowing that makes me uneasy about it. So I'm one of these people who can almost never separate the art from the artist.
I do it all the time because most artists, frankly, were assholes.
Yeah.
I mean, there's this great group of women artists called the Guerrilla Girls. Have you heard of this?
I know of them, yes.
Yeah. So for the listener, it's basically an activist group in the art world that are women, and they all wear gorilla masks, so you won't know which artists they were and are because they're still active. And they wrote a book once about how most male artists, were womanizing, drinking, sort of bohemian types, and they relied on the women in their lives to sort of make sure they were eating and their clothes were clean and they had enough money to sort of do their thing. And for me, it's like, because I know that, it's sort of hard to go into too much. I have to separate the art from the artist. It's like, let's not get into this, but it's like J.K. Rowling, Ugh. So
right.
Yeah, you can't take her on. I mean,
agreed. Maybe it's easier to separate or less difficult to separate the art from the artist if you really do love the art. Like J.K. Rowling, for example, I love those books.
I do
I've
too.
read them several times. Do I agree with the author's position on things? No, I don't. Mm-hmm. But, so yes, I intentionally separate the art from the artist there.
Mm-hmm. I think you have to. I don't think it's.
But I don't care for Thomas Kinkade or Bob Ross, so I don't have. And it's interesting now that I'm thinking about it. I don't care for Thomas Kinkade stuff. I appreciate it. I appreciate the talent and skill and the very unique vision that goes into it, but I don't like it. It's not for me for lots of reasons, and they're personal reasons. But now that I did some research on Thomas Kinkade, they're slightly haunting to me, and I like them less. But I felt the same way about Bob Ross's paintings. I appreciate them for the same reasons, but now that I know a little more about Bob Ross, I like them a little more.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think that in this conversation, I've come to the same conclusion.
Interesting.
Well, should we leave it there then?
That's probably a good place before we start arguing again.
Tune in next time to hear more arguing.
So final question. Thomas Kinkade paintings, are they art?
They're
It's the same answer every week, every time. Like,
I still say no. I just do. I'm the like aesthete of this pair. It's true. I can be kind of a snob, and I'm sorry. See,
this was
what? This was my idea this time.
This was your idea, yes.
Yeah, but I think it's a good conversation to have because.
Oh, I agree wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
I will trade this conversation for the world right now.
Well, that's so sweet. But Bob Ross, I would say, I can see those paintings as being detritus of an act. I mean, they don't really exist without him. They're just stuff. They're just hotel room paintings.
But they're more valuable because of him.
Yeah, exactly.
Because of his work, because of his personality and his
image and
the teacher in him, what he gave to the world, not just paintings, but inspiration in the way he did it.
Right, exactly.
So had we come across 30,000 Bob Ross paintings without knowing him, would we give a shit?
Probably
not. Yeah.
Probably not. Just to tack this on the end, there's some artist that I see in various memes that go around Facebook. You've probably seen it too. I think you posted one to me the other day with like a Thomas Kinkade-esque cottage scene with Godzilla in the background.
Oh yeah, no, that was a Thomas Kinkade. Somebody had just
painted. Like there is this guy who like paints goofy stuff on like thrift store paintings, and I guess Thomas Kinkade. But like, and I think that's hilarious.
Going back to our memes episode.
Yes, exactly. So that's all for now, folks. Tune in next time.
Do we have a topic for next time, or are we going to surprise everybody?
I have a couple topics up my sleeve that we will talk about.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, everybody, for listening, and have a wonderful holiday if we don't talk to you before then.
That's right. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for your attention and patronage. If you truly enjoyed this podcast, please like, subscribe, follow, download, and add a comment if you wish to join in the conversation. Please join us again on this enlightening podcast. But is it art?